Today is the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Armistice at the end of the First World War. As an introduction, I thought we'd just reflect a little bit about the origins of Remembrance Day. At 11 a.m. on the 11th of November 1918, the guns on the Western Front fell silent after more than 4 years of continuous warfare. The Allied armies had driven the German invaders back, having inflicted heavy defeats upon them over the preceding 4 months. In November, the Germans called for an armistice in order to secure a peace settlement. They accepted Allied terms that amounted to an unconditional surrender. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month attained a special significance in the post-war years. The moment when hostilities ceased in the Western Front and became universally associated with the remembrance of those who died in war. This first modern world conflict had brought home the mobilisation of over 70 million people and left between 9 and 13 million dead. Perhaps as many as a third of them with no known grave. The Allied nations chose this day and time for the commemoration of their war dead. On the first anniversary of the Armistice in 1919, 2 minutes silence was instituted as part of the main commemorative cemetery at the New Cenotaph in London. The silence was proposed by Australian journalist Edward Honey, who was working in Fleet Street. At the same time, a South African statesman made a similar proposal to the British Cabinet, which was endorsed by King George V personally. And he requested all people of the British Empire to suspend normal activities for 2 minutes on the hour of armistice, which stayed the worldwide carnage of the 4 preceding years and marked the right of victory and freedom. The 2 minute silence was popularly adopted and became the central feature of commemorations of Armistice Day. And for those of you who are my age and are perhaps a little bit more will remember how everything came to a dead halt at 11 o'clock on the 11th. In Perth, cars would stop, people would stop, and it just was amazing. On the second anniversary of Armistice in 1920, the commemoration was given added significance when it became a funeral with the return of the remains of the unknown soldier from the battlefields of the Western Front. Unknown soldiers were interred with full military honours in Westminster Abbey in London and the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. The entombment in London attracted over 1 million people within a week to pay their respects to the unknown soldier's tomb. Most other Allied nations adopted the tradition of entombing soldiers over the following decade. After the end of the Second World War, the Australian and British governments changed the name to Remembrance Day. Armistice Day was no longer an appropriate title for a day which commemorated all war dead. In Australia, on the 75th anniversary of Armistice in 1993, Remembrance Day ceremonies again became the focus of national attention. The remains of an unknown Australian soldier exhumed from a First World War military cemetery in France were ceremonially entombed in the Memorial Hall of Memory. Remembrance Day ceremonies were conducted simultaneously in towns and cities all over the country, culminating at the moment of burial at 11 a.m. and coinciding with the 2 minute silence. This ceremony which touched the chord across the Australian nation, re-established Remembrance Day as a significant day of commemoration. 4 years later, in 1997, Governor-General Sir William Deane issued a proclamation formally declaring the 11th of November to be Remembrance Day, and urging all Australians to observe 1 minute silence at 11 a.m. on the 11th of November each year to remember those who have died or suffered for Australia's cause in all wars and conflicts. Hence our presence here today. We'll go on to our wreath laying, and I would ask anybody who has wreaths or floral tributes to come forward, please. The RSL Maryland, please. Sorry, President, Mr. Blight. there any private tributes, please? Now ask Bob Boyd if he would come forward. Bob's just been on a trip through Europe to some of the battlefields, and he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as Greg just said, my wife and I just returned from a trip to Europe. We spent some time in the town of Bruges in Belgium. We did a battlefield tour and found it very interesting. The large ridge area near Polygon Wood before the war was actually a target area or a firing range used by the Belgian army. The surrounding area was flat and had no cover for thousands of metres. The German force had taken over Polygon Wood and fortified the area. The Allies had sustained heavy casualties trying to take the ridge, so General Plummer, who knew the area quite well, decided to tunnel the area. The British had been tunnelling under mezzanine wood since June 17. Since 1915. And on June the 7th, 1917, 12 tunnels were all constructed. They were all filled with emerald, which is a very high explosive. 430 tonnes in all were used under the German lines. The detonations were heard in London. Some 10,000 German soldiers were recorded killed and 7,350 taken prisoner. Unfortunately, many British and Australian troops were also lost during that campaign, as it was the only high ground in the area. And the area now is just the burial ground of huge craters. We proceeded on to Tyne-Cot Cemetery in Yeats, where thousands of Australian and British soldiers are buried. The cemetery is beautifully maintained, and when you think of the wrecked bodies of the poor devils in there, you wonder why. We also visit other ceremonies, including the only one for German soldiers in a Red Cross clearing station. In the Essex Farm Cemetery, 2 graves were of special interest. One was the grave of 5750 Valentine Joe Strudwick, who enlisted in the 8th Battalion, the Rifle Brigade, aged 14, and was killed aged 15. The grave was recently visited by his family, and the other one was that of John McRae, who wrote the poem In Flanders Fields, which I'm going to carry on to. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, where the crosses, between the crosses row on row, that mark the place and in the sky, the lark still bravely flying, singing fly. Since heard, scarce heard among the guns below, we are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt the warmth, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith of us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I'd now ask if everyone would stand for the ode and the last post in the national anthem, please. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. Going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. lest we forget. We'll now stand for now and continue with the national anthem. That concludes our service, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for attending. You're invited to come down and share a cup of coffee, cup of tea with us down at the RSL, if you would like. If everybody turns up, it'll be an interesting exercise, but I'd love to see some of you down there, please. That'd be great. Thank you once again.